Hey everybody, welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 10 things to know when you're buying property in Big Sky. There's a lot of differences between buying here in a mountain town than wherever you came from, and we've curated a pretty good list for you.
Yeah, we've bought and sold and helped clients on over hundreds of homes here. We've made mistakes, we've learned a ton over the years. We figured we'd put this together for you guys, save some time, save some energy, and maybe learn something. Let's go inside. All right, so what you see online in the state of Montana is not always what you get. Montana is a non-disclosure state. We do not publicly record sales prices. They do go on the MLS, but they won't feed into some of the sites like Zillow or Redfin or whatever your preferred use is. You do need a licensed realtor to tell you what an actual sales price was recorded at.
Yes, so what that means for you is when you're doing your property window shopping online, like we know everybody does, using Realtor.com or Zillow or whatever it may be, you'll see those estimates or the projected price of the home. Those are not necessarily accurate when you're window shopping online. All right, moving forward, the next point is the seasonality of our buying process here in Big Sky. Because we have two main seasons, summer and winter, when you notice the cumulative days on market, you'll notice they might be longer than they are where you live. And sometimes that means there's nothing wrong with the property, but that's just how it is here.
Yeah, our big tourist seasons are pretty much from Christmas until April 1st, and then June 15th or so until the end of September. So most of our buyers and sellers are being active during that time. That's when people are here vacationing, looking at property when they have time post-vacation hours. May through April and October, November, leading into Christmas is not a really big selling season. So you'll also notice around these times, things will come online, things will come offline. So you need to pay attention to the seasonality of the market here in Big Sky.
It's also important to know that many buyers need two seasons here to discover what the property that they might be interested in is like in both the winter and the summer.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've had people vacation only on the mountain before and never really experienced summertime down in the meadow. They come on vacation for the summer and realize that's probably where they're gonna spend most of their time off mountain and end up buying a property down in the town center in the meadow instead of on the mountain. All right, on to the next point. We kind of touched on this a little bit before, but where most of the locals live here in Big Sky, I think most everybody that we know in the community lives down in the town center, meadow, canyon. Very few families live on the mountain. And the reason for that is most of these schools, shopping, restaurants, bars, families, and kind of ease of use around community centers and trail systems, and then weather plays a big factor too, is all down in the town center and the meadow.
Whereas most of our second home buyers, they're sometimes interested in being up on the mountain a little bit further away from those things that you need every day, like the grocery store and things like that, because they're doing much shorter trips, and those everyday trips to the grocery store are happening less frequently for them.
Yeah, and there's a good trade-off though. So if you're willing to make the drive to school or to get some milk per se, but you're really in love with skiing, you're gonna have the best winter skiing in and out of your property, trading for driving up and down the mountain to get your kids to school. So it's really like personal preference. We have friends that live on the mountain. We just say that the ease of life, snowpack, weather, and kind of getting yourself around the community is much, much easier to live in the town center and meadow.
So when we talk about buying in Big Sky, there's four major neighborhoods that you're considering. There's the two private clubs, which includes Moonlight, Basin, and Spanish Peaks. And then you have the Mountain Village, and then you have the meadow or town center.
Yeah, and let's not forget the canyon as well. So maybe there's kind of 4.5 or 5 on that list if we combine the clubs. We spoke about this briefly before. Most of our local community lives down in the town center and meadow for ease of use. We can talk about maybe Spanish Peaks first and why people choose to live there. So everything in Spanish Peaks is centrally located. It's really close to town center. They've got a great private Tom Weiskopf golf course. The Montage is right there. I think living in Spanish Peaks for longer periods of time can certainly be easier than up at Moonlight Basin, but you can share some of the differences of like being up at Moonlight.
And Moonlight Basin offers a lot of the same amenities or similar amenities that Spanish Peaks does in terms of private ski lodge, some private restaurants. There's a 5-star hotel in each of those communities. Where Moonlight, and a golf course. Where Moonlight is different is that it's about 20 minutes from the town center, which is where you get your groceries and things like that. So you are a little bit further removed from the town, but your skiing experience is better access than in Spanish Peaks, for example.
Yeah, I think there's more nature up in Moonlight. You're more exposed to the quintessential Montana experience, and it's the one opposite of Spanish Peaks is more spread out. Like each clubhouse is probably like 2 or 3 miles or 5 or 6 minutes from each other, where Spanish Peaks, if you want the convenience, you can kind of walk from the Ascend building and walk from the Montage and walk to the clubhouse pretty easily. The last bit, the canyon, that's going to be a place where if you're looking for elbow room, large acreage, the cabin in the woods, access to snowmobiling, your outdoor recreation, and you're not so concerned with being in the mix of the community as much, like the canyon's probably gonna be a really good spot for you.
And with the canyon, you usually experience slightly lower prices because you don't have close proximity to town or skiing. But like Matt said, you get more elbow room. And that brings us to the last neighborhood, which is what we often call the Mountain Village. And that is, if you're comparing it to Moonlight Basin and Spanish Peaks, that's where you get a lot of your sort of good access to skiing, but it's in a public setting as opposed to private. So your ski access is great. Again, you are a little bit further away from town. You're slightly further away from town than Spanish Peaks is, but slightly closer than Moonlight Basin.
Yeah, I'd say we probably don't know a ton of people that live at the Mountain Village full time. It's kind of hotels, think, Vail Village or Beaver Creek Village or Teton Village in Jackson, where everyone is coming there for vacation, après, bars and restaurants, shopping, and basing their full-time ski experience and then biking in the summer. But we don't really know a ton of people that live at the Mountain Village year round. Maybe in the winter, huge ski bum, you want to be first to the lift, that's definitely your spot. All right, before we move on to our next point, just a reminder that we are licensed realtors here in the state of Montana, and we would love to help you buy or sell a home. Call or text the number below. Let's get in touch. Moving on to our next topic. A lot of people don't know that Big Sky is unincorporated and kind of governed by a lot of HOA, local boards, some elected and non-elected positions here, Big Sky Owners Association. So I think it's really important that you get in touch with somebody that understands all of those different organizations and can explain how Big Sky operates.
Where that might be different from where you are is that we don't have local government. The local government, in effect, is these various HOA committees and boards that exist here in Big Sky.
Yeah, we have a resort tax too, where it's collected on food and bev and lodging and whatnot. And then it's almost kind of libertarian in my opinion, where the town has some, officials that sit at the end of the year and kind of figure out, okay, the fire department is gonna get this much money, the police, parks and rec. The cool thing is all those tax dollars are going back to Big Sky, but it's definitely kind of how we self-govern here as an unincorporated, town in the state of Montana. That kind of leads us into the next point, is that Big Sky is between 2 counties. So we're in Madison County and we are in Gallatin County, kind of split down the middle here, and Alan can explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, the biggest thing to know is that the majority of the population centers in each of those counties are not part of Big Sky. So in Gallatin County, you have Bozeman, which is the bigger city that makes up Gallatin County. And then in Madison County, you have Ennis. And the county, the services that they provide, a lot of the times they don't serve anything more than the one major road that goes through Big Sky, which is a county road. Everything else is handled in terms of snow plowing and things like that. It's handled by the HOA budget that controls whatever neighborhood you're talking about.
Yeah, and like we spoke about before, resort tax is why we need to collect that money to kind of self-govern and fund all these different local amenities and infrastructure. So
with all that being said, with some of these nuances that make Big Sky so different from even the rest of Montana, we think it's incredibly important for buyers to get familiar and make a relationship with a local realtor, even as opposed to someone who works outside of Big Sky, even if it's in Bozeman or in Ennis. It's totally different where they operate, and these local realtors can help you navigate some of the nuances of our market.
Yeah, if it's not us, we'd love for it to be us, but we highly, highly encourage that you work with someone who lives here, who works here, who plays here, who owns property here. It's non-traditional in a sense, trying to figure out, you know, HOA rules and Big Sky Owners Association, architectural guidelines, what you can or cannot build. We actually get a lot of questions. You know, we get phone calls like, can I put a tiny house down on, and you know, we probably know the answer to some of those, save you some time, you know, and some energy there as well. So we'd really recommend to work local. You can kind of talk to a little bit about, like, quite a bit of the market happens here off markets, like in other luxury areas, Aspen, Hawaii, Vail, you name it. There's tons of off market transactions. So
yeah, one of the other things about, you know, navigating some of the nuances of buying real estate in Big Sky is that this town is incredibly small. The community is incredibly small for those of us who live here year round. So when you have questions about HOA or what you can do or how certain things work, there's a good chance that when you're working with a local agent, they'll know the people that sit on those boards that have the answers to those questions, whereas somebody else who's not in our very small community may not know.
Yeah, and when you start going down that exploratory road too, you'll find out, oh, so-and-so is gonna list their house, or this might be coming to the market, or the Smiths are moving this summer. And so there's just quite a bit of tribal knowledge here locally between, you know, the seasoned real estate professionals, where you might have an advantage, or you come to us and say, I'm looking for a cabin on the river that has 3 bedrooms. Okay, there's nothing on the market. Alan and Matt, go find it. There's a limited amount of agents here that can probably accomplish that goal, so it's important that you connect with the right person.
Exactly. Yeah, so many of our transactions that are done here in Big Sky are done off market. So it really is important to have an agent that does what we talk about all the time, which is shaking the trees. If you're a buyer that knows what you want, and like Matt said, if it's not on the market, we can go out there, and because we know we have our, you know, our own client list of people that we've sold homes to, maybe they want to sell again, but they haven't listed it.
Or like somebody wants to upgrade or move properties, like we can help facilitate that. In the last quarter, I think 20 to 25% of our deals were off market. So it's just something that happens frequently here and moves quickly. All right, while we're on the topic of local and working with local folks, we also think it's important, and it might help you in your process, definitely speed, time, energy, headaches. Work with a local lender. We've got some great ones. We could send you 4 right now today, and you can kind of tell them how they help navigate certain things like HOA, condo docs, and when we work with out-of-state lenders, it'll get kind of caught up in the weeds sometimes and can't get through underwriting or can't get through, you know, condo disclosure documentation. And our local guys and gals will crush that for you.
Yeah, one of the problems with using a national lender that we've seen is that when it comes to getting like condo questionnaires answered and things like that, the local lenders are just much better equipped to deal with that.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, they've seen everything here before. I mean, we've done hundreds of transactions, we've seen it all, but these lenders have seen it all times 10. So they're not gonna be surprised when something comes across their desk that might look, you know, unordinary to a lender in Chicago that's never done a condo building in Big Sky, Montana before.
Yeah, some of those differences that national lenders aren't used to seeing is the fact that we're in an unincorporated town. So local lenders are going to be able to see that and have seen it a bunch of times before and know how to navigate that process. The last point that we're going to make today that we think is very relevant to all buyers is a somewhat new development for us. And that's the way that the state treats taxes when it comes to what's called a homestead or a long-term rental versus a short-term vacation rental.
Yeah, I think it's important that you learn the implications of what you're purchasing, how you intend to use it. Going online is kind of difficult. We've got some great CPAs that will help you out and kind of put it in a carry sheet for you. But there's different structures for whether you're going to live here full-time, whether you live here full-time and rent property to year-round residents, and then if you live here or don't live here and short-term rent your property, you know, less than 30 days, there's a higher tax code for each one of those. And it's important that you learn that because that's going to factor into carrying this home for the next, you know, year to 10 years.
And deciding how you want to underwrite it when you're choosing to buy a home. All right, we've covered a lot of information today, but if you click the link below or scan the QR code, we've prepared a great buyer's guide for you, which also goes over the 4 neighborhoods that we've discussed in this video.
Yeah, Alan, that's a great point. The buyer's guide is mobile friendly, it's free, it's easy to look through, it's easy to use. You can do it while you're here on vacation or at home. Reach out to us, our information is there, and thanks for tuning in to our video. We will see you on the next one.